I bid you welcome.
I welcome you to my house.
Welcome to my house.
Welcome to my home.
Hello Horror Hounds, welcome to my horror house and welcome back to the year of James Herbert. James Herbert fans will often scratch their heads and wonder why there have been so few adaptations of his work for TV and the big screen, especially when so much of his work is already cinematic. The answer might begin and end with one of the earliest, I think the second adaptation of his work, an adaptation of his first novel, The Rats, which is Deadly Eyes, also known as Night Eyes, or on this DVD that I had to import, Fieras Radioactivas, which I imagine means radioactive rats. There's no radioactivity in the movie or in the original story. You would expect that a story, a pretty pulpy creature feature story about giant killer rats would be ripe material for a sort of B-grade, low-budget horror movie. But then you've got the real sticking point, which all low-budget horror movies have, of not really having enough money to do justice to the threat that you've got. It's famously known as the film that dressed up Dachshunds and Terriers in rat costumes and had them running around, and the actors had to put bits of meat and sausage in their pockets to get the little dogs to run after them to try and get the meat. And unfortunately, that's probably one of the most endearing sort of behind the scenes aspects of getting this film made. But once you know it, you can't unsee it when you watch the movie. And so there's this push and pull between them struggling against their means to try and realise something, I actually think in quite an innovative way, and the pull between that and it being, once you know how the trick is done, it's comedic rather than horrific, and straight away when the rug's pulled out from under you in that way, there's kind of no going back. You're descending headlong into cult movie territory where friends will gather to watch it with beers and laugh rather than be chilled or scared. Our film opens with a slideshow lecture about rats. It's great, you can be entertained and you can learn something at the same time. It's a really ham-fisted way of hammering home the sort of environmental message that they're trying to give in this, as lots of sort of mid to late 70s and early 80s sort of enviro nature attacks movies all have their little nod and a wink to environmental concerns. Believe the rats in this have fed on some grain that has been treated with steroids for reasons, so they become big, bulky, roided up rats rather than a mutant strain from Herbert's original. It's not the only change that sort of defangs the story. This is a Canadian film, and the adventure moves from London to Canada, which is a move that unfortunately strips out all of the subtext of the story. I didn't realise this was a Canadian film, and I started watching it, and the sort of snowbound, sort of North American, obvious sort of setting, and a lot of brown and beige clothes made me think, this has got a feel of a lot of early Cronenberg movies, and this anodyne sort of more vanilla than vanilla lead actor really reminds me of some of his sort of blank-faced negative space leading men from his early Canada days. And I looked it up while I was watching it, and lo and behold, this is a movie from the great country of Canada that has given us some great horror and also some great cult horror. This has got Canadian low budget horror written all over it, which adds to the charm of it. Unfortunately means that set in Toronto, we've got absolutely none of the subtext of Herbert's original, which is a sort of seething, quite angry indictment of the inequalities of the British class system. I'm going to say something that's going to make me sound a little bit bonkers now, but I think putting rat suits on little dogs is a stroke of genius. Unfortunately, once you know that that's the trick, you can't unsee it and it becomes funny rather than scary. But the first time the rats appear, and there are times in the movie where you can see, when you see them just running down corridors, that is pointless. When you see them in a shop with people and suddenly realise that the scale is off, these aren't domestic rats, there's something, they're much bigger, and the brain takes it in and it looks wrong, and that sense of wrongness coupled with the fact that the way these creatures move is completely organic because they're little dogs in rat suits. But what your eye takes in when it's used sparingly and they're shot correctly is, this is wrong, that's not the right size, and it's definitely real because it's moving in a way that's real that you still can't fake inside a computer. And the first couple of times I saw the rats near or in the same shot as a human, my brain did a sort of, hang on, that's not quite right what I'm seeing, there's something off, there's something wrong about that. And used sparingly, that effect could have been very effective. The trouble is you can't sparingly use rats in a film about a swarm of giant killer rats. You have to have your rats. And when you've only got a couple of dozen dogs as well, it soon becomes very telling that all the rats you see on screen are all the rats they've got. And we'll just see them running down one corridor, or then we'll see them from another angle and another angle. And that's really the problem with the film. I don't think putting dogs in rat suits was the problem. I think shooting them and the way you cut around them is the issue for this film. You've either got shots of the dogs running along a corridor, or you've got shots of big rat puppets chomping onto someone's hands, or you've got shots of people running, or you've got shots of people screaming, and they're all sort of chopped up together in a very linear fashion. You've got no real shots of your organic creatures in the same shot, very sparingly with humans, and that's when it absolutely works the best. All the attacks, unfortunately, devolve and descend into, here's a shot of the rat scurrying, here's a close-up of someone going, ah, here's a shot of now a rat puppet on an arm, then a shot of some more people running around, then a shot of more of the dogs in the little costumes running around, then another scream, then some more puppets, and then eventually we'll end with the aftermath, which is actors lying still, covered in gore, while rat puppets sort of shake at their necks and shake at their arms. Rinse and repeat. And unfortunately, and I know that they were working under limitations, it's probably the best solution to the problem that they had at the time. It quickly becomes old and it quickly becomes boring, and there are no real interesting ways beyond these first initial shots of, oh, those rats are too big, when you can actually see a human in the shot running away from them. It becomes repetitive and dull, and then because you don't have the money for lots of big set pieces, the entire rest of the movie is taken up with an equally or probably more dull love triangle between a completely insipid male lead, one of his students who, it's not really a triangle, one of his students fancies him, but he's just met this other woman, more age appropriate, which in and of itself is quite unique in movies, let alone horror movies. He's not interested in the schoolgirl at all, and is interested in starting a relationship with this age-appropriate woman who's got a head on her shoulders, and when she thinks something's going on with one of his students, tells him to fuck off, quite rightly. That's quite refreshing, but I'm in a film about mutant killer rats. I'm not interested in whether this silly sort of love story is going to work out, especially when it's clearly in there to pad the film out, so that there's huge swathes of the film where we don't have to have expensive special effects. I mean, my God, for a 90-minute film, I think the entire middle 30-minute section is taken up purely with this sort of love story relationship element with no rats in it whatsoever. No, No, you can't do that. Especially not when Herbert's novel has given you the blueprint of exactly how to do this with his little vignette chapters which move away from the main action and show little side scenes of introducing characters and then having them killed. That's how you do it. The movie does this sort of a couple of times, but when the rat attacks are so samey, then those little sections become very samey. One of the standout set pieces in the novel, and it's not the culmination of the book, but one of the standout set pieces is an attack on a underground train, subway. I can completely understand why the filmmakers would want to use that as the denouement of their film, and it's got a kind of nice little twist at the end to suggest that it's not over. But it's just so low key compared to the rats essentially overrunning the whole of London and bringing a plague with them in the novel. To have, oh, this person sort of gets attacked here, oh, that person's got bitten, oh, this old man gets attacked, but his body rolls down some stairs so no one finds it. There's no growing threat. No one, apart from our hero, even has an inkling that there are rats around. So it just builds to this sort of opening of this grand sort of subway line with the mayor on it, and then the great and the good get attacked at the end, rather than it just being the ordinary working Joe schmoes getting attacked. There's an attack scene in a cinema which sort of happens parallel to it, which is taken out of the book. So you get your two big attacks happening sort of at the same time to try and give the thing a sense of momentum, but it just sort of ends. There's a big attack here, there's a big attack there, then there's a big explosion, and it's all over. Oh no, it isn't. So yeah, I think budgetary restraints meant that the look of the film ain't great, the scope of the film ain't great. It's going to be a fun one to watch with beer and your buddies, and to laugh at the cute little dogs in rat costumes. But like I say, once you start laughing at it, the hope for it to be taken seriously as a horror movie is absolutely dead in the water. And unfortunately, I think that with that comes the notion that, oh no, James Herbert properties aren't profitable, and the idea that more of his stuff will be adapted for a long time becomes, in and of itself, dead in the water, which is an enormous shame. The actors had to put bits of meat and sausage in their pockets